B&M Crop Consulting's Missy Bauer joins Farm News 5 this week to discuss yellow soybeans and much more.
We've been getting a lot of calls on yellow beans. As you can see out in this field, there's a lot of yellow sticking out in these fields. Really variable as you drive by fields or get out and are walking and scouting your fields. It's not everywhere, but it's certainly wherever this water is sat the longest. So as we've went now into the fourth week on and off of rain, a lot of saturated soils has certainly affected these beans. So when you look out there and you see these yellow beans, what's really happening out there is really what's going on kind of below ground. So I dug these up. It's important to dig them up, but as you dig these up and you take a look at the root system, there are very few actual nodules on these, okay? And we're at that point here into the R2 growth stage where we really need our nodules kind of working for us. Here's another example here where there's just not a lot of nodules on these beans themselves. So, and the nodules that are here really aren't working very well either. Again, why? Just due to these saturated soils. These soils have just been too wet too long. You can always check your nodules by basically kind of slicing them open. I always just use my thumbnail. You kind of break that open. What you're looking for is how pink or what color they are in there. They should be a really bright pink color compared to maybe more of a whitish or a grayish color to it. So if I compare that to an area where the water hasn't stood, these are my healthier looking beans. And you can see on these, there's a lot of nodules on these. So just all the difference that makes is the amount of water that sat there. The lack of oxygen in the soils has really impacted the microbial aspect and the rhizobium to really create these nodules and get them going good. So in this healthier looking plant, if we go ahead and split some of these nodules open, you see they're very nice, bright pink color here. And we know that that's doing a good job. We're getting nitrogen made and into this plant. So a lot of this yellowness is certainly just the wet feed itself. In addition to that, we are fighting a lot of early disease here compared to what we usually do. So there's bacterial blight, Septoria brown spot. We've even seen some Phytophthora, downy mildew, which seems really early for. SDS likely has been infected. We won't see that till later on in the season, but the infection has probably taken place. And then my other concern from a disease perspective is white mold. So as we're flowering here in these beans under these cloudy days, high humidity situations, lots of rainfall, our possibility for white mold infection is pretty great. So again, that's the only way to prevent that is going to be spray a fungicide during this R2 stage, which is during that full flower period which we're in currently. So there's still some time to do some white mold preventative applications out there, in my opinion. The other thing we're seeing, which is again something very early, is going to be the frog eye leaf spot. So a lot of times the frog eye, we won't see this really show up typically as we get more into that kind of August time frame. But if we look here on some of these plants, kind of get more of a close-up here of some of the leaf lesions on the leaves themselves. This is the classic frog eye leaf spot here, where you can see kind of the brownish lesions, and the outside ring of them there is that kind of brownish or reddish ring, not a yellow ring that's like on a lot of diseases. And if you look down in here, you'll see, just kind of pull the canopy back where you can see a fair amount of this frog eye kind of mixed in here. So that's going to be something we really need to keep an eye out for as we go forward. That'll be very variety sensitive as well. Now we're also seeing some fertility issues where we're getting some plants that have manganese deficiency with all this rainfall, where we've basically kind of denitrified the manganese also, where you see we got the dark veins but then yellow in between. That's more of our manganese issue, and we can do some foliar treatments to help correct that. You're probably going to want to pull a tissue test just to for sure verify that out in the field to make sure it is a manganese deficiency. And then the other thing we're seeing and getting a lot of calls on is some herbicide damage. So if you look out even in this field here and we look across, you see a lot of damage on these leaves. So these were sprayed when we finally could get across them after the rains had let up during the heat. So we didn't have a lot of choice of when the proper time to spray was this year. It was either too wet or it was too hot. And we had to do the lesser of two evils. In this case, it did get sprayed when it's hot. Having that ammonium sulfate surfactant in there, which we needed to kill the weeds, really did cause some injury here on the beans themselves. So when you look across the bean fields, they definitely look a little ragged, they look a little ugly, but we still have a lot of potential. It doesn't mean that it's time to walk away from these beans. When we take a look at these beans here and we realize where we're at for nodes, Currently on this particular plant, we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, almost 9 nodes now. This bean plant will end up in that 17 to 20 node range by the time we get to the end. So we've got a lot of nodes to add on here, and the majority of your yield potential starts about node 7 and on up. So from a yield perspective, we're just getting into the good stuff. So don't worry too much about what's going on down here. We're really worried about from here going forward. So even though your beans might look a little tough today, a little ugly today, we've got a lot of potential still to go forward. Don't walk away from your bean crop yet today.